Well, good evening, and welcome to the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, director of the museum, and I'm so delighted that you're all here tonight. Many of you are longtime friends of the museum, and it's great to see you. And it's also wonderful to see so many unfamiliar faces. Thank you all for being here. We're assembled tonight, appropriately enough, in the Wolf Kahn and Emily Mason Gallery. What better venue could there be for this event? It's been 2 years since Wolf last spoke here at the museum. We had been doing this annually, but the vagaries of life and health and scheduling interfered last year, and we just couldn't work it out. So I was particularly thrilled when Wolf let me know a few months ago that he'd be willing to speak again this fall before he and Emily head back to New York for the winter. We're making a video recording of tonight's talk, which will be available as a DVD in a few weeks. I believe it's also going to air on Brattleboro Community Television, and that we'll be putting it up on the web. That's the kind of thing that you'll be sure to hear about if you subscribe to the museum's bi-weekly email newsletter, or you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, which I encourage you to do. When Wolf is finished tonight, we'll take some questions, and then we'll get set up back here on the stage for Wolf to sign your books, posters, prints, calendars, body parts, what have you. Conventional wisdom would dictate that in introducing Wolf, I review at least some of the highlights of his remarkable career and resume. But you know, you can look all that stuff up pretty easily. And besides, you've probably heard it all before. Instead, because we're gathered here in Brattleboro, Vermont, which Wolf and Emily have called home for almost 50 years, at this museum, which wouldn't be thriving today without their decades of guidance and generosity, in this gallery that bears their names, I decided I want to say something a bit more personal, because in truth, in this community, we think of Wolf as one of our own. We don't mind sharing him with New York and Italy and the glamorous art world, but we know Wolf not just as the masterful artist who continues to expand the boundaries of landscape painting and whose works are held in the collections of museums and presidents around the world. We in this community know Wolf as a charming, generous, irreverent guy who shops at the farmer's market, hunts for mushrooms in the woods, goes to Marlboro Music Festival concerts, and sings in the choral fantasy, swims at South Pond, watches softball games at Memorial Park, and with various friends, some of whom are here tonight, sets up his portable studio in the fields and backyards and alongside roads throughout our community, creating artwork that casts our corner of New England in its finest light that many of us never even notice or certainly don't appreciate. So I know I speak for all of us who live and work here when I say that we're so proud to consider Wolf Kahn one of us, and so grateful to him for enriching this community for so many years, for doing as much, if not more, than any single individual, I believe, to bolster Brattleboro's reputation as a bastion of creativity and art. With that, won't you please welcome Wolf Kahn.
Well, I've got a lot of family here, so there's bound to be some applause. Anyway, I'm very pleased that the hall is so full. You know, nothing pleases a speaker more than to have a full hall. In addition, an audience is very necessary because they provide the impetus for the speaker to go a little further than he should normally go by revealing intimate secrets and talking about things that he himself didn't know existed. So thank you for being here. And I noticed that some people who've come all the way from Guilford to come here. Now, I had I used to give a course at the National Academy in New York, and there were always more people who wanted to be in this course than the small studio allowed. So I had to go through the list each time to find out whether people were having second dibs, and then all the ones who came just for entertainment and to hear again what they'd heard before, I didn't let them come in, because after all, one doesn't let it be known that one only has a small repertoire of stories. So that's one secret one wants to have kept. So if I say any stories that you've heard before at this talk, please walk out, because I don't want to be known as a person who's constantly repeating himself. But I also have to apologize for two very sad facts. One is that I've gotten old, which is inevitable, but it's still a sad fact, I mean, I didn't used to have to wear cane here, and I didn't need help all the time. But now I want to encourage you that if I stop and search for a word, I want you all to try and help me to find that word. I found out that that's a very good device to keep an audience rapt. Because everybody thinks, gee whiz, he's going to need a word that I know. So don't worry. Yeah, there'll be quite a few of those. Then also, I don't have very good eyes. And that means that I have to constantly refer to my notes, which I can't read. But I have here a thing, which if you push it far enough back, it gives a light, and then you can read some of it. But it means that I'm not going to be able to make the smooth flowing narrative that every good speaker knows how to do. I used to know how to do it, but I don't anymore. So I need your help. And another thing is that, I forgot to tell you, I gave a speech in Hamburg. I had a show at the museum in Hamburg. And in Germany, whenever there's an opportunity to give a speech, one is given, So I had to give a speech. So I started out saying, well, you don't want to hear my speech in German because I speak the German of a 13-year-old, But on the other hand, it's good for my character. What little there is, to try at least. So from then on, I went on in German, and I said, anyway, there's so many among you who speak English that you can certainly help me there too. So anyway, the subject of my talk is, what was it again?
Control and letting go.
Control and letting go. Thank you. Like I say, I'm deathly afraid of repeating myself. So in order to avoid that, I looked at the tape that they made at my last talk. And my last talk was called, what was it called? Wait a minute.
Are artists special? That one? Was it Are Artists Special?
No.
It was
No, it wasn't that. It was, what's called, gee whiz.
Can Art Be Taught?
No, that was a long time ago. I've been on this podium a couple of times, you know. and I keep coming here as long as I think the hall's going to get filled, you know.
It was
spontaneity
and planning in art.
Yeah, the last talk was called Spontaneity and what else? And planning. Spontaneity and planning. So for somebody who doesn't like to repeat himself, to have the next talk be control and letting go, it's just another way of saying the same thing. Anyway, there's a lot of laughter, and there's also a few serious things that I wish to communicate with you, given this opportunity. But like I say, I have to find out where I am. See, 2 years ago, I didn't have to wait quite so long to find my place, you know. So it does mean that getting older does have its disadvantages. Yeah, I want to tell you a story about something that actually happened. Do anybody here know anything about baseball? No, nobody. Okay. Well, I got a phone call one time, and the guy on the phone said, "You don't know me, but I know you because I bought a painting of yours in, what's the town that where there's no there? Huh? In Oakland. Somebody who played for the Oakland A's. And he says he's a pitcher for the A's, and he's going to be pitching against the Yankees tomorrow night, and he wants to invite me to sit behind home plate. So I said to my wife, says, "You interested in coming?" She says, not for a second. So then I asked Melanie, my daughter, and she immediately was very eager to come. However, in the second inning, this pitcher friend of mine, his name was Ken Forsch. Yeah, he was a 15-game winner for the A's, and he got knocked out of the box after the second inning because they already had 6 runs against him. You know, so Melanie pokes me in the side and says, "Your guy ain't doing so good." Anyway, the next day, I told him on the phone when he invited me, I said, "I want you to come to my studio and have lunch with us." So he came, and we started having a discussion about how one learns to be a pitcher and how one learns to be a painter. And so he said, "Well, you know, the important thing for a pitcher is not to let the hitter know that he's going somewhere with that ball, that he's aiming it somewhere, you know, because then he right away knows how to hold his bat and where to hit this ball so the other team can't get it." So I said, you know, that's just like painting. If you aim in a painting, you know too much where you want it to go, you're already at a great disadvantage, because it means that all the alternative moves that spontaneity and letting go would allow you to make, you can't make them, because they don't fit into your scheme of a predisposed aim. So we both agreed that being a baseball pitcher and being a painter are very related. Next time he was in town, we invited Michael Tree, who's a famous violinist and who lives here in the woods, and who's also a great baseball fan. So we invited him, and after the game, we all went out to dinner together. And he was asked, you know, how do you learn to play the violin? He says, well, you try not to aim. You just learn to be strong and predictable as far as your abilities are concerned. But when it comes to playing the piece, you have to depend on other things than what you already know. So for example, the third movement of the Razumovsky Quartet by Beethoven, it goes so fast that you can't possibly learn it by knowing all the notes and following the notes. So what you do is you just try to become strong and know what you're doing, sort of, and then let go, you know. So the pitcher again nodded his head. He says, I can see that being a pitcher and being a fiddler is the same thing practically. So this is a story to sort of introduce the subject in a lighthearted way, but it has a certain grounding of truth to it, because the one thing you don't want to know how to do as a painter, or maybe as a pitcher too, is know how to do the thing too well ahead of time. You don't want to make it into a performance, but it has to be a bit of uncertainty attached to it, which of course for a pitcher is very easy. For a painter it's more difficult, because there you're constrained by things you've done before. You know, there's nothing that makes you more uninventive than past history of your own paintings. You know, because you have a feeling, well, this painting worked out once, it'll work out again. And especially if you're elderly and you no longer have a memory, you don't even remember having done this painting. So this business of avoiding performance, I want to stay on that. We had a lecture that I gave to the participants of the Marlborough Festival. And the subject was the relation of painting and music. And I said there, says in music, as in painting, you don't want to aim. You want to keep the thing loose enough that the spirit of amateurism is still in some kind of evidence. So David Sawyer, who is one of the senior people there, he pipes up and he says, I hate amateurs. And so I said to him, I said, well, David, I've never heard a note come out of that fine instrument of yours that didn't have an edge of anxiety to it. And the students, you know, who'd been under his tyrannical, they all applauded and laughed. And thought that was the most wonderful thing they'd ever heard. But it again shows that one doesn't want to be too tightened up in doing the thing right. Students have to learn control. Students have to learn, how to do the thing so that it comes out right. But then as soon as you're no longer a student, you better forget all that and become something else, become an amateur again, And I guess that applies to every profession to some degree. I gave a lecture at Harvard one time, and my lecture was called, Emily loves the title of this lecture, it was called, Is Modern Art...
Is art a sacred cow?
Yeah, wait a minute. Is art a sacred cow or is it bull? At the end of that lecture, one of the economics professors came up to me and said, whatever you said applies to economics too. So I'm not afraid now to say things that have general application, because it might help somebody, become an economist. One becomes what one is by dint of mentors, people who've had a big influence on your development, on your life. And I've been very fortunate. I started with a painter who's now become very famous, Hans Hofmann. And Hans Hofmann was the kind of person who was born knowing things that other people don't even know when they're dead. He was way ahead of the rest of us. He was one of the 3 people that I met or maybe 4, that I think are extraordinary. Great men, even though greatness is not a very American concept, and in fact it's very unmodern to even mention the word. But these people are, just for your information, Hofmann, Saul Lieberman, who is the famous rabbi and the director of the Hebrew seminary in Jerusalem. And then there's a man named Robert Caro. Have anybody read a book by Robert Caro? Yes. He wrote a book about, right now he's writing a whole series on Lyndon Johnson, And the reason I think he's so astonishing is because he really knows how to listen. Very few people know how to listen, where you talk to them and you have a feeling you've got their full attention. Because most people, they're thinking about, what they're going to have for supper, or something, irrelevant to the subject. But Carol, he has the capacity to sit there and really give full attention to what you're saying. So for a biographer, that's a very useful thing. And for a person in general, it's terrific. There's another man like that named, wait a minute, with French name, a dancer. Huh? Jacques, yeah, Jacques d'Amboise. And he has that same quality of being able to really listen. And the reason that he has that quality makes him very, very capable of working with children, because children really understand when an adult is really listening to them, or if the adult is just pretending to be there, being nice to a kid. Isn't that true, Mason? Okay. Yes. Perfect answer. This is, and the thing about Hofmann that I especially profited from is that he always put the ring higher than you could reach. In Oak Bluffs, where I was living for a while, they have a carousel, and that carousel goes round and round. At a certain point, there's a ring hanging up high, and you have to try and grab that ring, and then you get another ride on the carousel if you succeed. You know. But the main thing is that most people don't succeed. You know. So, and Hofmann constantly hung the ring higher than the students could grab it. So, for example, there was an exhibition by famous abstract expressionist painter named Clyfford Still. Well, I went to see that show of Clyfford Still's, and I couldn't make head or tail out of it. You know, what's he doing? What are these paintings about? I have no idea what these paintings are about. Even today, I don't have any idea what the painting's about. And Hofmann said, yes, it'll take you a number of years before you understand what these paintings are about, because the ring was hanging pretty high for Clyfford Still's work. And so in your own work, you want to be able to hang the ring kind of high, because if too many people like it, if it's too easy, then it's not even maybe art. Who knows? You know, I mean, it becomes very easily merchandised. You know, especially if you're kind of successful, as I am. You know, then it's quite easy to have the dealers come into your studio and say, for example, in my case, because I'm known as the band painter. You know, a painter of New England bands. So the dealers come in and they say, got any bands? Because everybody wants to have things that they already know. You know? And art is not about what you already know, but it's what you should try to get to know. You know, so that difficult art, I think, is something that we should all respect, and certainly not make any quick judgments about. You know, that's one of the things that happens in today's world. You know, people make judgments on things, and especially if the commercial world helps. You know, like high prices on page 1 of the Times. You know. Happens every now and then that something gets sold for millions of dollars. You know, well, everybody says, well, I don't know what it's about, but it must be good because it's so expensive. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I turn the page. I think I've done almost everything here. Let me talk about my own work a little bit. Well, that's probably one of the reasons you came here, because you wanted to hear an artist unveil their secrets. So with my own work, something very pleasant happened lately, the last couple of years. He says, I turned a new leaf. I became a different kind of painter. And how did that happen? It's because I used a new medium. I found out that they have a thing called oil stick, which you can use together with oil paint, and it dries and can be used as a permanent substance. And the thing about oil stick is it made me. It was hard to do. So each of the paintings that I did that had oil sticks in them got to be all cluttered and crowded with signs and strokes and so forth. And after a while, I started seeing my paintings no longer as a landscape, but as a texture, as something which you don't try to decipher what it's about, but it gives its game away by the way it's done. So since I've been trying very hard to make non-descriptive landscapes, which is in a way almost a contradiction, this was very helpful to me to have this new medium. And I've been doing it ever since, and it's very difficult, And one of the things that you want to do as an artist is to have a painting that makes you go through your paces, that you don't always can tell ahead of time, where the intention of why you're making this painting, how you're making it, and so forth, is mysterious even to you as an artist yourself. So that's one nice thing that's happened in my life the last few years, that my paintings really changed, which only one other painter really did that in his high old age, and that's Titian. So I have a feeling that I'm very close to Titian. Because he loosened up his stroke and his color and everything when he was in his 90s. So that's another reason that I try to eat vitamins, so that I can become as old as Titian was when he did his best work, most advanced and adventurous work. And the thing that being an artist forces you constantly to value and to chase after is the idea of freedom. You don't want to be constrained in your work. You don't want to feel that there's limits to it. And this new way of painting that I found, I mean, I'm sure if I look real hard, there's 10 other painters doing the same thing somewhere, But for me, it's new, so it makes me very happy. And that's one of the few reasons for genuine happiness at this moment in my life. What else can I tell you? Maybe I think what I should do at this point, you've heard me talk about myself at some length. And anyway, an artist shouldn't talk about himself. Let other people do that, Because if you talk about yourself, you're bound to get it wrong. So what I want you to do now is to take what you've heard me say and find out how wrong it is and how insufficient, and ask questions to, since you have me here, that are going to make me reveal myself in a more wholesome and a believable way. So I thank you very much for listening so far, and now I hope that you come up with some very impertinent and at the same time profound questions. Danny's going to go around with his microphone, and anybody who wants to know something, raise their hand.
The question was, Wolf, do you do commissions? That's the short version of it.
I've been known to do commissions, and usually they come out badly because something is missing. When you start thinking about the public in general, you're usually on the wrong track. Especially in recent art history, where the people who determined what was good and what was bad usually were the wrong people, and the audience was led astray And it's only people like Van Gogh and Cézanne and these famous people at the end of the last of the 19th century who got it right, because they wanted to paint something that had not been done before, like paint everyday life. That's one of the things that they wanted to do. And of course, to paint everyday life, they had to, in those days, paint people with top hats and coats with long tails and so forth. And people thought these were terrible subjects for an artist. Artists supposed to be painting the heroism of the ancient Greeks and things like that. So for a while, everything that was officially countenanced was on the wrong side of history. And now we finally caught up with that, so that every living room has a reproduction of a Van Gogh hanging in it, and we look at those paintings, and we forget how revolutionary they were at the time. But the people who want to be revolutionary at this point, it's a bad time to be revolutionary, because you make a mistake on the other end of the scale, and you start, like, let's say, throwing spaghetti against the wall and taking what sticks and doesn't fall to the floor to be the painting, you know, things like that, where you're led astray by the idea of wishing to be a revolutionary and modern. So I really consider myself somewhat conservative in painting, not in politics, because there, to be conservative in public politics nowadays, even in Vermont, maybe especially in Vermont, is the wrong way to go. So the thing to do is to like I say, to just follow the dictates of your own mind and your own sensibility. And even if you end up being very influenced, which I was for many years and probably still am, people can forgive you that, or else you have to go, as T.S. Eliot said. He says, immature poets, and he was a poet, talking about poets, but the same thing could apply to artists. It says, immature artists are influenced, mature artists steal.
You said you're experimenting with oil sticks, and you have painted with pastels and tube oils. I like experimenting with different mediums. I have started with pastels and now have oil sticks, and I'm also trying caustic. And I noticed that people in the workshops that I've taken, when they try a new medium, they try it using it exactly the way they used their older medium. So if you're using oil sticks, they might try to work with them as if they had a pastel. And when you discovered oil sticks, did you immediately just try and see what it could do, or were you influenced by how you painted?
No, it sort of crept up on me, you know. It's only lately that I'm really beginning to use it in its full capacity. The fact that you translate or transfer the medium that you normally use to what you're doing in a new medium, that's very normal. And it happens all the time. Like, for example, there's an outfit called the Pastel Journal, Pastel Society of America. Well, you look at those pastels, they all look like oil paintings, you know. And actually, the thing that's terrific about pastels is you can make a pastel be almost breathed upon the page, you know, rather than to give it full force all the time, you know. So I think to take a new medium and try and make it behave as though it was something other than itself is not a good idea.
The question was about Woolf's relationship with Hofmann as a mentor. What was that like, and in what way did Woolf regard that as a mentor relationship, and is that something he's tried to do with others?
Is that more or less what you're asking? Yes. Good. Well, it's a good question. I would never presume to have the insights that Hofmann had. I mean, he was a very unusual person, who managed somehow to give people who had the talent the go-ahead to try things that were new for them, and for people who didn't have the talent, he threw them out of school. I mean, in each instance, he was doing them a favor. Now, I've been a teacher. I taught at Cooper Union for a while. I taught children before that. And I think I'm a good teacher, but nothing extraordinary, you know. I think I'm a better painter than I am a teacher. Because to be an extraordinary teacher, you have to have so much insight into what's going on in people's souls, you know, what empathy you can put to the situation. And to find a fine teacher, I mean, when people ask me, tell me that they're teachers, I keep saying to them, well, do you enjoy teaching? And they say, yes, I love teaching. I say, well, then you're doing God's work, because that's very important to be a good teacher. Because most people don't have it in them to be really fine teachers. It's a rare profession that's done right. And Hofmann really did it right, because one of the things he did that was very valuable, he never got involved in people's personalities. It was always his critiques had to do with, like, let's say the blue is too dense over here and the pink is too strong over there, you know. And these are all things that you could gauge with your eye, the other people, you know. So when in the school, the students would just follow Hofmann around and watch him deal with each work as he came upon it. And if we felt that he was being unduly harsh, we'd even tell him. We'd say, well, you know, Mr. Hofmann, this guy has just been painting for 5 minutes, you know. Then I have to tell you a story. This how good he was in dealing with his group of students. There was one of the students who was there when I was there, who became quite well known under the name of Larry Rivers. And when I was there, his name was Irving Grossberg. So Hofmann used to say, when people got started in a school, he'd say, the first thing you have to remember is that you're dealing with a surface that has 4 sides, and it's essentially a geometric figure. And what you put on there has to do with those 4 sides, has to relate to those 4 sides. So Rivers came in next week, and he brought in a triangular piece from the Codex Atlanticus of Leonardo. And he said, Mr. Hofmann, is this a work of art? And Hofmann looked at it and, you know, put his glasses to the end of his nose. He says, Rivers, or Grossberg. He says, Grossberg, it is always good to ask questions. Now go on to the next person. He didn't like confrontations. You know. I mean, confrontations are a waste of time.
Phil?
I was curious on the continuum of control and letting go. Are there times where you struggle and wonder if you're only doing controlled letting go? and also, when you're letting go, do you know it and feel it? Like, can you feel it and then say, oh, I am letting go now? Like, is that a know what's happening?
So the question is on the spectrum between control and letting go. Do you struggle and sometimes feel like you're only doing controlled letting go? And also, is it something you can recognize when you're really letting go? Can you feel it?
It's a good question to which I don't immediately have an answer. I know one thing is that students invariably are on the side of control. They want to get control, they want to know how it's done and what the tricks are, you know, technique and so on. When you're dealing with students, they mostly ask questions having to do with technique. And one of the things that Hofmann used to say, he says, every important artist invents his own technique. He says, and technique in that case has to do with scale, it has to do with, you know, the color and all these things which go way beyond how to hold the brush and how much turpentine to use. Although he also paid attention to that. If somebody had dirty turpentine, Hofmann would say, you can't paint with that, that's too messy, that's too dirty, you can't control the color with that. I mean, he was able to range the field. As for me, I try to keep my turpentine clean. I've learned that over the years, and I really, you know, this separation between control and letting go is something that I thought of for this lecture, and it really doesn't exist. I wanted to be sure that the hall would be filled.
So when I see something beautiful, a beautiful landscape, I often squint my eyes or close them and think, I wonder how Kahn would see this. When you start a piece of work, do you paint what you see, paint what you feel, paint what you want to see? How do the colors and the shapes come to you?
Did you get that back?
Did everybody hear that? Good. Well, that's a good question. What happens to me is that if I know too well ahead of time what I want to do, it invariably fails. I get sort of a feeling that something has a capacity of development in it. You know, what I'm looking at. Like, for example, tonight I was looking at the horizon. The horizon went from very deep blue to rather pale pink and back to a kind of a flesh color, you know, the sky. And I thought, well, in the olden days I used to be able to paint that. Now, of course, having tried to paint non-descriptive landscapes, I am not allowed to anymore, you know. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff you can't do when you're a mature artist that you could do when you were a kid. Yes?
When you're working on a piece, Wolf, and there comes to that point where it takes on a life of its own, do you sort of experience losing all concept of space and time? Do you, for example, it might be around 7 o'clock and suddenly it takes on a life of its own, and the next thing you know, it's like the next morning. Do you ever experience something like that?
You mean I have to paint the whole night through?
No,
Well, like I say, I never really tried to be accurate, you know. Those are all problems that were solved around 1905, you know, when art was supposed to really reflect the way color appears in nature and so forth, you know. No, I'm not terribly interested in accuracy. I am interested, though, in being able to read my painting, to be able to, the painting has to be able to tell me, without me telling it, what it wants. You know, if I tell the painting constantly what I want, I don't think I'm going to get anything very wonderful. I have to really be alert and look at the painting in terms of what its needs are. Like Paul Klee, who was a fine painter of the early 20th century, he said that the artist is the person who knows how to take advantage of accident. But in order to find out that there's an accident about to happen, you got to be very alert. You can't just be going through a routine. Now, the main enemy, I think, of art in general is conventionality. To do what's expected of you, to follow instructions, to not be able to read the painting on its own terms. You know, because its own terms are always much more interesting than the conventional terms that are available to you. Do I make sense?
Okay, for a few more questions?
I have personal.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When you get stuck, or when you're working on an idea and it's just stuck, do you have things that you do to sort of get around it or through it, or?
You're damn right. I avoid it. When I feel stuck, I turn that painting to the wall and I work on another painting. I always have a few paintings going, and in various stages of undress, you know, so that I never get stuck, really. Although you can get stuck because you're not in the mood or you're tired and so forth. I mean, that happens.
Did you have a question here? Yeah, sure. Well, there are a bunch of hands. We'll get to them.
Well, I wondered, you divide a lot of your time between a very rural environment and a very urban.
I'll repeat it. Yeah.
And I wonder if that has any influence, if you've ever considered it as an influence on being creative.
I think the question is, does the fact that you divide your time between a very rural environment and a very urban environment have an effect on your being creative?
Well, I don't make much of a difference, really. Like I say, especially today, I'm no longer trying to be descriptive. You know, I'm trying, when my painting is on a good way, it's becoming a sort of overall texture, and you can still sort of feel that it's based on an idea of landscape, but you're never going to be able to see whether it's evening or morning, or whether it's an oak tree or an ash, because those things, you know, they keep you from being inventive, from being careless and irreverent, and I think and playful. The word playful is got to be used more often. You know, I think an artist should always remember that he's really doing a dance. You know, he's doing something that's essentially not terribly serious. You know, and it should be taken lightly. You know, as soon as you start making heavy claims I think you're on the wrong track. I mean, I am anyway. Other people may be, on the right track, but when I start making heavy claims, I'm always ending up in the wrong camp. Yes.
How do you know when a painting is done?
How do you know when a painting is done?
Well, there I have to quote my colleague and superior and great friend Robert Motherwell, who said, he's a very fine abstract expressionist painter, and he died about 10 years ago, but he continued to be painting to the very end, and he says, my painting proceeds by a series of mistakes. And if I come across a mistake that I can't correct, then my painting's finished.
I have a painting in my house that's been handed down to me that must be 50 years old or so, and I'm thinking about your analogy to your Oakenlay's picture, and I'm thinking it's not about aim, it's about home runs maybe, because it's a beautiful painting and it's been around a long time, and maybe you've made a lot of home runs consistently over a long time, and I'm thinking about your inner dialogue being really rich and really beautiful, and I'm wondering, what do you have for breakfast that sustains that dialogue for such a long period of time?
I don't know how to do anything else. Each of these disciplines, like to be a musician or to be a sculptress as you are, a lifetime isn't too long to get to the bottom of it all, so that I don't think I ever get bored with what I'm doing, although I suppose I should be. But there's always something new to discover, and you used the word beauty and so forth. Well, that's again a dangerous word, because it makes you like, what does beauty really mean? I mean, it most of the time it's a convention. It's something that people agree on, And I think you should always be going after stuff that you don't have people agreeing on, so that you can really do something original and heartfelt. I think convention and the idea of beauty are things that are imposed upon you from the outside.
We have two questions here. The gentleman right there, and then...
You mentioned Robert Motherwell, who was, besides a very great painter, a very influential theoretician in his time, which I think is somewhat analogous to Hans Hofmann in the so-called Provincetown school, and the whole business of his push-pull business with in his instruction, or his. Did you find that was very influential in your time?
Well, I tell you, I was a faithful Hofmann student. I probably still am, because I haven't found anything that Hofmann said that seemed to me to be arbitrary. Well, Hofmann and Motherwell were friends and had a great deal of respect of each other. But I don't know if I can really say that I followed Hofmann's advice terribly. I had, during the time I studied with him, I had great criticism of him. At the same time that I admired him, I thought that he kept talking about expressionism. And expressionism in Hofmann's dictionary was a dirty word. And then his great admiration was for a painter named Mondrian, Everybody here know Mondrian? Yeah, okay. Well, he used to quote Mondrian to us students. He said, Mondrian made his compositions such, they were so exact that all he had to do is move a line a millimeter and the whole thing would collapse into decoration. You know? So we'd look at Mondrian and we'd shake our heads and say, what does he mean by that? You know, decoration. And you know, how come he's an expressionist and he likes Mondrian, who's an absolute geometric painter, you know? But another thing that Mondrian said that I found very helpful is he said, to achieve plasticity, and by plasticity he meant live and movement in a painting. To achieve plasticity, you have to establish unequal but equivalent oppositions. Unequal but equivalent oppositions. So that was like his formula for achieving greatness, to do unequal but equivalent oppositions. And for many years, that also drove me crazy because I didn't know what was meant by it. I'm sure you don't know what's meant by it, but you're all right because most of you aren't painters, so nothing gets hurt. You know.
I'm an amateur painter, and I just like to paint. But I find myself being very hypercritical of my work. I'm never satisfied. So I'm wondering, is there a point in your career where you stepped back from your painting and you said, I'm not so bad? I mean, did you reach that point?
Well, I first went through a terrible period where I really thought of giving up being an artist. And I'd been drawing all my life and all through high school, so on. And then to be all of a sudden confronted with the fact, because I was in a school where I was surrounded by GIs, people who'd gone 5 years on the battlefield, and here I was a 19-year-old kid, in among these heavies. And now all of a sudden, I was in a situation which was very different from high school. In high school, I was always a big shot, And here I was, all of a sudden, I was no longer a big shot. I found that very uncomfortable. And so I went to Hofmann. I said, what should I do? And Hofmann said, you are suffering from mental indigestion. Says, what you best do is to go away a little while and not practice art for a while. So I took him seriously, and I went and worked in a logging industry out west in the woods. And in the woods, surrounded by nature and everything that you see in the woods, slowly my enthusiasm came back. And then it never left me, But I went through a real crisis too. And you have to be ready for that too. And then, you go to art school. In art school, even if you're a good student, you have people who care about you. Well, you get out of art school and nobody gives a shit. There's nothing that's more miserable than an artist fresh out of art school, a student, if he sells anything, he'll sell it to his grandma.
We'll take two more, okay? Wolf, are you all right with that? Two more
Sure.
questions? Okay, right here.
I have a question. Once you've finished a painting, what is your relationship to it and the control and letting go? And are you controlling it, or do you let go? Do you sell it?
Once I finish the painting, it's no longer mine. It belongs to the world. I don't know. It's as though somebody else made it. I'm not at all in love with my own painting. I'm in love with the idea of being an artist. I think it's a noble profession and a serious one, but it's not anything that makes you special. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though here I am in front of all these lovely people behaving as though I was special, you know. But I really basically at heart don't really think I am. And I think my paintings are, well, I mean, they're the result of my work. And they've got my hopes and my fears and my sweat in them. So some of them I like better than others, but most of them I have a feeling, why do I have to like these paintings? You know, just because I made it? That's no good reason. You know. And anyway, you as a professional, if somebody comes along and wants something that you've done, to withhold it, to hold it back just because you love it, I think that's presumptuous and irreverent.
Does letting go and being less constrained in your painting affect the speed at which you paint?
The question is, does letting go and being unrestrained in your painting affect the speed at which you paint?
I always paint very fast. You know, I got the fastest arm in the world. There's only one guy who's faster than I am on television, this guy who... But he doesn't have all those other highfalutin ideas that I have.
All right, now we're into bonus round. We're just I'm gonna have to cut it off at some point. I know a lot of you have 8:30 dinner reservations. Michael.
Well, you've talked a lot about being a student, and I know also you've been a teacher for many years. I mean, Caravaggio was a student. You wonder what his teacher thought of him. So the question is, can you teach art, or is an artist born?
Can you teach art, or is an artist born?
I think it varies. You know, some people can teach art, some people can misteach art, and some people don't have to do anything. Like, for example, there was a wonderful French primitive painter named Douanier Rousseau, who was self-taught, and yet every artist who saw his paintings was delighted with them, you know, because they were so good. So it's very difficult to characterize and lay out rules for these kind of things. I think there's as many different artists as there's different people. Not everybody's the same, except me.
So we should want to wrap it up there. We're here, so we can end it.
Yeah, I think we should. It's been long enough. I'm thinking of the table.
Wolf, I can't thank you enough. You've been so generous. You're always so generous, and to stand here and give of your time and your thoughts and your wisdom, it really means a lot to all of us. Thank you so much.